This Christian story is based on a powerful song that you'll hear at the end of the video. Watch, listen, and be blessed.
Most of us live with an invisible noise. It is the constant hum of unspoken worry behind our daily conversations, the weight behind every smile, and the heavy silence of unanswered prayers. Mara felt this weight every day. As a nurse in a city hospital, she worked in the center of the noise, the pain, the loss, and the waiting. She represents the exhausted believer, running toward the suffering of others while trying to hold the world together with her own hands. Then she met Eli. He was 7 years old, fighting cancer, yet his eyes held a strange brightness. He spent his days drawing a world where the sun overflowed the sky, and every broken thing had finally been fixed. This timeline illustrates the mechanics of spiritual fatigue. When we map out Earth as the present and push heaven into the far distance, we create a gap. The result is a physics problem. The entire weight falls on this single point of human effort. When restoration is viewed only as a future destination, the burden of the here and now eventually becomes more than one person can carry. Then the air softened. Impossible things began to happen in the hospital wards. A homeless man with severe frostbite began to heal at a rate that defied medical logic, and a woman who had been mute for years suddenly found her voice. Mara watched as Eli, usually fragile, reached for a cup of water with perfectly steady hands. He looked toward the window and whispered that the world felt closer, just as the sky began to take on a richer, more patient color. What would happen if the boundary between these two worlds didn't just thin, but disappeared entirely? What if heaven collided with the world right now? These anomalies suggest that divine restoration is more than a distant hope. It is a tangible disruption to the way we experience suffering today. As the shift intensified, a psychological change took hold. People realized they could no longer lie. It wasn't that they were forced to be honest, it was that deceit felt structurally unstable, like trying to build a house on moving water. In the hospital hallways, social masks fell away. Colleagues began sharing quiet truths and offering apologies they had delayed for years. The buried words of a lifetime finally found the air. In Christian theology, heaven is the domain of absolute truth. As it draws near, the shadows where we hide our true selves are naturally pushed into the light. This exposure is not a destructive act. It is the necessary clearing of the ground so that spiritual healing can actually begin. On a Sunday morning, the world seemed to exhale. Mara carried Eli to the hospital roof to witness the moment the invisible became visible. The sky responded with a light that came from everywhere at once, as if reality itself had opened its eyes. Across the city, people dropped to their knees. It wasn't fear that brought them down, but recognition, a sudden memory of something humanity had always known, but somehow forgotten. This collision was a return to our original purpose, awakening a dormant understanding of what the world was always meant to be. In the days that followed, pain and loss didn't vanish, but they lost their finality. They could no longer hide behind the noise. Mara had lived her life straining and cracking under the pressure of keeping broken lives from drifting apart. Eli's truth was Mara was never the glue. Love is the active, sustaining force holding the universe together. When divine love becomes the infrastructure of a community, we are released from the impossible task of saving each other. We are finally free to simply care for one another. Jesus taught that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. This means we don't have to wait for a global supernatural event to inhabit this reality. We can initiate this shift in our own lives today. It begins when we practice radical honesty, drop our defenses, and offer the apologies we've been withholding. We silence the invisible noise by choosing local, communal care over wealth and ambition. We trade the weight of the world for the weight of the person standing right in front of us. These choices are the practical ways believers manifest the kingdom of God in a broken world. Sharing a meal, listening to a friend's pain, or forgiving a wrong are more than just kind gestures. They are active participation in the divine. Every act of selfless grace acts as a glimpse of that omnipresent light. It makes the believer the literal point where heaven touches the earth. Standing on the roof, Mara realized that heaven had stopped being a destination to reach. It had become the ground she stood on. If eternal love becomes the daily language we live in, what could possibly stop heaven from being here right now?
What if the world could tell a softer story, where broken hearts are never left alone, where every shadow turns into a doorway to a love that leads us safely home, where kindness falls like morning rain on dry ground, and every tear is met with gentle hands, where no one has to search for hope in silence, because mercy fills the land. If heaven touched the earth, would we believe it? Would every wounded soul finally be free? If love became the language that we lived in, oh, what a world this would be. No hunger, no goodbyes, no lonely children, no fear that steals the light from anyone, just grace like bread for every life that's broken, and peace like rising sun. What if the world could trade its gold for goodness, and learn that love is more than what we earn? What if the greatest wealth was simple mercy, and every heart had something it could learn? No locked doors on the hope of every dreamer, no winter that would never find its end, just God's own light restoring what was scattered, and making all things new again. If heaven touched the earth, would we believe it? Would every wounded soul finally be free? If love became the language that we lived in, oh, what a world this would be. No hunger, no every tear will finally be erased. When love is not a dream, but our forever, we'll stand